Hey guys, tonight we begin with a bowl of steaming rice, the echo of wooden sandals on stone, and the slow creak of a paper screen sliding open. You're lying on a futon in a chilly room that smells faintly of cedar, charcoal, and the distant tang of pickled plum. Outside, the morning mist clings to the mossy stones of a castle courtyard, muffling the footfalls of servants already hard at work. Somewhere nearby, a caged nightingale trills, unaware it's a little too early to be this enthusiastic. You are a samurai lord in Edo period Japan. Not the top of the hierarchy, mind you. You probably answer to someone who answers to someone who swore fealty to the shogun. But you've got land, servants, a sword that cost more than your uncle's entire house, and most importantly, breakfast is about to arrive. And trust me, you'll need it. Because life as a samurai isn't all cherry blossoms and stoic sterased stomach grumbles, silent rituals, and the daily risk of accidentally offending someone with your chopstick angle. The floor beneath you is cool through your robe as you sit up. You stretch slowly, like a cat trying not to look like it's trying too hard. The futon is rolled up and spirited away before you can even blink twice. One servant brings hot water for face washing. Another offers a tray with green tea so bitter it could insult your ancestors. No one speaks. They wouldn't dare. You haven't had your pickled plum yet, and without that sour shock to jolt your brain into wakefulness, you're barely human. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, drop your local time and the location in the comments just so I know where all my sleepy history lovers are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push aside the screen and step into a corridor of polished wood, the grain gleaming from years of oil and slippered feet. The air outside is cool, the kind of chill that wakes your skin but doesn't bite. You pause near a small inner garden, where a pine tree leans at an angle so precise it could have been measured by mathematicians. There's a koi pond, of course. The fish move like ghosts under the surface, uninterested in your morning obligations. Everything smells faintly of smoke. Someone's already lit the kitchen fires. That's a good sign. As a daimyo or mid-level samurai lord, your household runs on a mix of military discipline and the careful rituals of courtly life. Everyone knows their role. Even breakfast isn't just food, it's a performance. You're the star, but also the audience, and possibly the critic. And sometimes, if someone forgot to double wash the rice, you're also the executioner. Not literally, usually, probably. In the private dining room, a low, lacquered table waits, a square, cushioned zabutonis, perfectly centered. On the table, the breakfast has already begun to take shape. Bowls of rice that glisten like tiny pearls, miso soup with strands of seaweed and tofu that wobbles slightly, as if nervous in your presence. And yes, at the top left corner, like a tiny red sun rising in your meal, sits the umeboshi. It's small, wrinkled, and soaked in salt and sourness, so intense it could wake a ghost. You'll eat it with rice, or in one brave bite, or if you're feeling nostalgic with a spoonful of warm tea, letting it dissolve into a sour, salty brew. Samurai swore it fought fatigue, hunger, and possibly dishonor. Whether that's true or just a weirdly aggressive PR campaign from plum farmers remains up for scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether breakfast was always this formal in mid-ranking samurai homes or whether the documentation we have only reflects upper-class rituals. What's clear, though, is that food wasn't just sustenance, it was symbolism. Your morning plate said as much about your place in the social hierarchy as your armor or your calligraphy. You take the first bite of rice. It's warm, sticky, perfectly seasoned with a pinch of sesame salt. You follow with a sliver of grilled mackerel oily, charred on the edges, rich in flavor, then a slice of daikon radish pickled just right to crunch quietly. No loud chewing. You're not a bandit. The umeboshi comes last. The small bite. Your face doesn't betray the taste, but inside, your soul winces just a little. That's how you know it's working. Some mornings, the cook adds tamagoyaka sweet rolled omelette, or maybe a simmered dish of kabocha squash and lotus root. But the core of the breakfast stays the same: rice, soup, pickles, fish, and the unspoken rule that this meal, humble as it may seem, must be perfect. Outside, a wooden clapper marks the hour. The town below your castle stirs. Vendors begin laying out wares. Children carry buckets of water, and farmers set out with bundles strapped to their backs. But up here, in your cedar frame fortress, the world is still slow, controlled, delicious. You sip your tea again. It's cooled a little, less bitter now. The cup is simple, ceramic, with a tiny imperfection near the base. A flaw, but a beautiful one, like you, maybe. Or maybe you're just sleep deprived and overly philosophical because you got up before sunrise to eat a fermented fruit and watch your own reflection in fish broth. Either way, the day has begun. The rituals are in motion, and soon the swords will come out. But for now, you're warm, full, and still quiet inside. Let's stay in this moment a little longer. You're still seated cross-legged at the lacquered table, the last sip of green tea tracing warmth down your throat, when the soft thump of sliding doors reminds you the day isn't waiting. It never does. Two attendants enter, heads bowed low, their footsteps hushed against the polished floorboards. They do not speak, of course they don't. This is the pre-breakfast ritual hour. Words would feel like someone clapping during a moonrise. One holds a tiny ceramic dish of finely grated daikon, topped with a hint of citrus zest. The other carries a damp towel, warm from steam, folded just so. You take the towel first. It's not to wash with, not exactly. It's a moment of tactile presence warmth in the hands, a subtle reset of the senses. You press it against your face, steam and lemon mingle, your mind clears. This is not leisure, this is preparation. Before any food is touched, your body must wake. Not with alarm clocks or protein shakes, but with order. So you rise, slowly, there's no hurrying in this part of the morning, and step to the side room where a mirror of polished bronze leans on a low shelf. Your reflection is soft, distorted around the edges, like a memory. You smooth your hair with combs made of boxwood and bone. You tie your robinot, the battle-ready hakama, yet just the indoor one, neatly, always neatly. And then the tea. You kneel before a small brazier. The tea kettle's already singing, tiny bubbles hugging the iron. The powdered matcha is already prepared in its lidded jar. This is the informal tea, just a few sips, not the full-blown Chinoyu ceremony with guests and scrolls and philosophical weeping over moss. But even now, alone or with a silent attendant, it matters. You take the whisk, fold your hand around the chawan, and stir until a pale froth forms. The tea is grassy, bitter. It goes straight to the brain like a slap in kimono form, and it's supposed to. Samurai were not meant to wake gently. They were meant to sharpen. Historians still argue whether every samurai practiced this tea habit daily, or if it was more common among the cultured elite, those with Kyoto leanings and a taste for poetic suffering. But even among the rougher, battle-hardened retainers, a cup of tea before dawn was like a warrior's mirror. It showed you what you were before the world told you who to be. You sit in silence again, the bowl now empty in your hands. Outside, a crow calls from the rooftop. It sounds like someone clearing their throat rudely during a scroll reading. You choose to ignore it. Dignity must be maintained. The servant slides the screen again and enters with a fresh robe, this one stiffer, darker formal morning wear. Not full armor, not yet, but you've heard stories. Some lords sleep in partial armor just in case. Not you. You value your spine. As you change, you glance at the sword stand by the wall. Your daisho long and short blades rest there, perfectly aligned, polished, balanced. Some say the soul of a samurai lives in his sword, but right now, yours just looks sleepy. You adjust your obi belt, secure your sleeves, and nod to yourself in the bronze mirror, ready. Breakfast may seem simple on the surface, but in the life of a samurai, it's the spine of the morning. Before you can command troops or settle disputes or write yet another sternly worded haiku to your rice tax collector, you must be centered. That means body ready, mind alert, clothes neat, sword sharp, and no pickled plums stuck in your teeth. The silence deepens. You begin to notice it. Not just the absence of noise, but the shape of the quiet itself, like paper before the brush. This is what the pre-meal hour is built for. A kind of composed emptiness. There's a touch of movement now. Beyond the corridor, someone preparing the tray. You can hear the soft metallic clicks of chopsticks being placed, the faint puff of rice steam escaping its wooden tub. The servants are choreographing your meal like it's a diplomatic performance. And in a way, it is, because how you eat, when you eat, what you eat, how you sit while eating, these are all declarations. Are you precise? Are you humble? Are you too eager with your fish? Do you pause between bites or gobble like a farmer on tax day? These questions matter, not because anyone says them aloud, but because they are noticed, especially in a castle where nothing is truly private, especially in a house like yours, where loyalty is tested as often through etiquette as through warfare. A tap at the screen. Breakfast is ready. You rise, and this time you do not walk, you glide. You've practiced this. Knees slightly bent, heel barely touching floor, posture relaxed but upright. A good walk is quiet but confident, like a crane trying not to wake a pond. Back at the table, the meal has been laid. It's not just food, it's geometry. Bowls and plates align with elegant precision. Rice bowl bottom right, soup bottom left, pickles top left, fish top right. Each piece has its place, like soldiers in formation. You sit again, you bow slightly, and only then the first bite. The rice is warm, just sticky enough to hold shape, just fluffy enough to dissolve. You follow with a sip of miso soup, the broth rich with kombu and tofu, steam curling upward like incense. The pickled plum waits patiently for your attention. And somewhere, off in a kitchen you'll never enter, a cook holds their breath, wondering whether they've salted the plum too much or not enough, or accidentally used last month's batch, which caused that unfortunate facial expression incident. You'll never tell them, not directly. But you take a bite. The sour hits you behind the eyes. It makes your scalp tingle. You chase it with rice. It's oddly invigorating. You begin to feel ready, not just for the day, but for everything. The matcha, the robe, the silence, and now the plum. The ritual is complete. The day outside your paper walls is beginning to brighten, but inside, the light is still soft, diffused through shoji screens like moonlight through fog. Breakfast lingers gently on your palate, a hint of salt, a shadow of miso, the ghost of that plum still humming behind your molars. You sit a moment longer, letting it all settle. A samurai doesn't leap from the table like a startled peasant. You rise like mist, slowly, silently, and without drawing attention. Behind you, a servant clears the dishes. You pretend not to notice the way they inspect the rice bowl, measuring how much you left behind. Too much, and they'll think you're displeased. Too little, and someone might worry you're being frugal. Again, it's a delicate balance. Like everything else in this life, you make your way to the inner courtyard, sandals whispering against the floor. The stones are cool underfoot as you step onto the Engo part hallway, part porch, and part philosophical platform for staring at your pond and wondering whether carp have emotions. This moment, after breakfast but before business, is sacred. You stand in the quiet, not in full armor yet, just in morning wear. The air tastes faintly of ash and dew. Somewhere nearby, someone sweeps gravel into careful patterns. The rasp of the broom is soothing, almost hypnotic. This courtyard wasn't built for grandeur, it was built for reflection. A single pine tree leans at an angle perfected by decades of pruning and philosophical debate. A stone lantern sits nearby, probably older than your grandfather. You stare at it, pretending to be deep in thought. Really, you're just enjoying how the breeze lifts the hem of your robe. Historians still argue whether these quiet, meditative courtyards were used frequently by samurai lords, or if they were more for show design to impress visitors who never saw them actually being used. But in this moment, you're using it, and it feels real. You kneel, not out of obligation, but out of habit. Your hands rest lightly on your thighs. The smell of the pine tree reaches you sharp, clean, a little sad, like old armor that's been oiled too often. You remember the first time you ate pickled plum. You were a child, still half the height of your katana, and someone told you it would make you strong. They lied. It made your eyes water and your tongue betray you. You spat it out and were told to apologize to the cook. You did, but now, years later, you understand the plum isn't supposed to taste good. It's supposed to wake you up. It's the culinary equivalent of being slapped by your ancestors. You hear movement behind you, a soft knock. It's the scribe. Already, you are hoping for a longer pause. He bows, not too deeply as knees are bedanned. He shuffles toward you with a scroll under one arm. It's today's schedule. You don't need to open it. You already know what's inside. Petitions, grain reports, a minor border dispute involving goats, and the inevitable poetry contest your cousin insists on hosting every month. He writes terrible poetry. You can't refuse. He once saved your life, technically. You were choking on eel bones. Still, you suffer his metaphors like a warrior. You rise, brushing off your robe. The scribe hesitates. You know what he's about to ask. Shall I have the armorer prepare your formal set today, my lord? You pause. Today was meant to be robe only, light administrative work. But there was that letter yesterday about the rice thieves near the northern fields. Perhaps a show of strength wouldn't hurt. You nod. He bows again and retreats. You hear him whispering to someone in the hall, and soon the quiet is filled with the soft clatter of armor being moved. You return inside, crossing through another narrow hall that smells of camphor wood and old ink. On the way, you pass the family altar. You bow lightly. The incense has burned down to a stub. Someone will light another soon. Your grandfather's tablet rests in the center. He was known for many things military brilliance, a legendary mustache, and, strangely, a fear of mushrooms. Once, he demanded a mushroom-free breakfast for an entire season. The cook nearly resigned, but the pickled plums remained. You offer a silent thank you for the strength, for the odd stories, for the lessons no one ever says aloud, but everyone remembers. Another servant arrives, this time with a tiny lacquer box. You recognize it. Inside, more pickles, different from the breakfast kind. These are for your desk. Samurai snacking is a serious business. He opens it carefully, as though revealing a national treasure. Tiny slices of eggplant, cucumbers, and of course more umeboshi, a nod to tradition, a weapon against mid-morning drowsiness. You take one and nibble, just a sliver. Your lips pucker instinctively, but you pretend nothing happened. A true warrior betrays no emotion, except perhaps during poetry contests. Down the corridor, you hear the distant thunk of armor plates being readied. The rhythm of the day begins to assert itself, less gentle now, more precise, like the tightening of a bowstring. But even as the day prepares to pull you into its duties, you remain still for a moment longer. You gaze at the stone lantern again. You listen to the wind in the pine needles. And you remember the taste of this morning's plum, how sharp it was, how necessary. Then you step forward, out of the quiet, into the day. The clink of metal echoes softly now as you approach the inner chamber where your armor is laid out like a sleeping beast. Black lacquered plates catch the morning light in polite glints, the cords between them tight and freshly re-dyed. Your attendants are waiting, four of them, each with practiced hands and the solemn expressions of men entrusted with dressing a human fortress. They bow as you enter. You nod once, stepping forward, shedding your lighter robe with the ease of someone who's done this since childhood. The dressing begins, layer by layer, like history itself. First, the padded undergarment, soft, quilted linen to absorb sweat and prevent the armor from turning into a personal oven. Then come the suniate, the shin guards, strapped with silent precision. One attendant adjusts your foot position like you're a very complicated bonsai. Next, the hydatothy armorand, then the cuirass, the dough. It creaks faintly as it settles against your ribs. It always does that. You suspect the sound is deliberate, like the armor's version of a sigh. Here we go again, it seems to say. A thin breeze slips in through the paper window, and for a second you wonder what your enemies are eating this morning. Probably not umeboshi. Probably not watching four men lace them into a 100-pound suit of clinking elegance. Still, you wouldn't trade places, not even if their breakfast come with dumplings. Now the kotiamid sleeves have fastened, followed by the sewed, the ornate shoulder guards. They flare slightly when you move, like wings that forgot how to fly. Historians still argue whether samurai actually wore full armor during daily castle duties or reserved it strictly for travel and battle. But in households like yours prestigious, politically perched and always watched armor is part uniform, part performance, a declaration of strength, just in case anyone was wondering. A servant brings a mirror, full length. You check your silhouette, symmetrical, imposing, dignified. You look like someone who owns several battle standards and occasionally writes angry letters about improper tea ceremony posture. And then your favorite part, the helmet, kabuto. You reach out and take it yourself. That's tradition. No one else may place it on your head. You lift it, feel the weight of it settle into your arms. Inside, the padding is worn just to your shape. You lower it slowly, eyes narrowing as the world darkens, framed now by steel. The transformation is complete. You don't wear the full face mask today. That would be too much. You're not leading troops to the river border, not yet. But you do allow the chin guard to hang slightly, just a suggestion, just a whisper of, I could ride out right now if I wanted. You walk from the room like a ghost armored in lacquer and muscle memory. Your footsteps are heavier now, but still measured. You pass junior retainers in the hallway who freeze mid-step and bow, heads nearly to the floor. One of them sneaks a look as you pass. He'll talk about it later, probably describe you as radiating doom. You like that. In the meeting hall, mats have already been laid. Inkstones await. Scrolls are unfurled like sleepy snakes. The scribe is present again, seated cross-legged, already dabbing his brush. He's drawn today's topics onto a large summary board in exquisite calligraphy. You'll ignore most of it and ask him to read the rice production line again twice. You sit, the armor settles around you like an exhale. The morning session begins with a report on the new grain storage structure near the eastern fields. The builder's assistant, young, nervous, and over-moisturized, speaks too fast. You sip tea between his words. No pickled plum here, just roasted barley tea, the flavor dry and earthy. You nod occasionally. Make a small note with a borrowed brush. Your handwriting is unreadable on purpose. Next, a monk presents a grievance. The temple roof is leaking again. You already paid to have it rethatched last season. You remember because that was the same week the cook accidentally served squid sashimi that glowed in the dark. You begin to suspect the monk and the squid incident are somehow cosmically linked. You do not share this theory. You approve half the funds. The monk bows so low his prayer beads spill onto the mat. The scribe makes a tiny tutting sound. You ignore it. Between each item, there's a pause, just a beat, long enough to sip tea, glance toward the garden, and mentally review the taste of this morning's plum. It keeps coming back. Sour, sharp, unforgettable, like a lesson disguised as breakfast. A messenger arrives mid-discussion, panting, like a badly trained hunting dog. He holds a scroll sealed with a wax crest you don't like, the northern border again. You do not open it immediately. You let the scroll sit beside your teacup like an unwanted guest. The room shifts in tension very slightly. Even the scribe pauses his brush. Eventually, you break the seal. The contents are expected. A list of grievances, accusations of land encroachment, and a poetic line at the end that fails spectacularly to sound neutral. You close the scroll. You say nothing. Just reach for the lacquer box beside you and take out another slice of pickled radish. You chew slowly. Let them watch. You wonder, not for the first time, whether plum and war are cousins. Both come with a sting. Both leave a taste that lingers. As the morning session draws to a close, a minor official clears his throat to raise a question about seasonal taxes. You respond with a single raised eyebrow. The question disappears into the floorboards. You rise. Armor creaks. The scribe rises with you. So does the room. Outside, the sun is higher now. The quiet of early morning has turned into the slow rustle of midday wind through trees, footsteps on gravel, the low hum of decisions still echoing. You return to your chambers and shed the armor slowly, like a snake stepping out of its story. Your robe waits. So does your mirror. And so does the faint tang of pickled plum, still there, still you. You sit once again in the quiet of your private quarters, stripped now of lacquer and ceremony. The robe you've slipped into is lighter soft indigo cotton with the faintest scent of charcoal and cedar. It feels like exhaling after a storm. You rest a moment, staring at your reflection in a lacquered mirror tray left beside the folded armor. The lines near your eyes curve just slightly, either wisdom or exhaustion, depending on the lighting. There is still some time before lunch, a rare gap in the day. You decide to do what every samurai lord does in such moments: avoid paperwork. Instead, you signal for your senior attendant. He enters with the gravity of a man who knows the exact weight of his lord's silence. He bows and kneels, already holding what you were going to request, your seasonal gift ledger. A bound book filled with pages and pages of names, dates, and the edible or decorative items they've sent you lately. You open it and scan the columns. Dried sea cucumber from a coastal governor, a bolt of brocade patterned with stylized foxes from your niece, 3 jars of unusually large pickled plums from a rival clan lord who wants something. Always the plums. You remember tasting one yesterday. It had more confidence and flavor. You had to respect it. You pencil a note beside his name, respond with polite thanks, no promises, and a question mark next to the word plum code for maybe test this batch on someone else first. Historians still debate whether samurai lords truly managed these gift exchanges personally or whether clerks handled the etiquette while the lords nodded vaguely over tea. But here you are, flipping pages, matching names to faces, gifts to motives, remembering which cousin gets offended by dried persimmons and which one always forgets to send thank yous. It's politics, yes, but in edible form. You close the ledger and lean back. The floor beneath you is warm now. Somewhere outside, a child is shouting about a bug. Somewhere else, a priest is banging a wooden bell, and your stomach growls. You check the sun. Lunch approaches. Traditionally, your midday meal is simpler than breakfastless ceremonial, more functional, but you've always believed that even function can be elegant. You rise and walk toward the smaller dining hall where a low table has already been prepared. The tray is set. You do not need to ask what's on it. Rice, of course. A bowl of clear broth with daikon radish, a small plate of simmered burdock root, glossy and brown, and another pickled plum poised in the center of a porcelain dish, as if auditioning for an opera. This one is redder than the morning plum, redder and smaller. It seems to glisten with intent. You stare at it. You sigh. You eat it anyway. The salt hits first, then the acid. It's the flavor of regret and pride mixed together. You chew carefully, eyes narrowing slightly, and chase it with a sip of broth. It's good. Not pleasant exactly, but good. Like a well-written haiku about rain. Brief, sharp, and oddly comforting. Your servant bows again and replaces your tea. This time, it's green-light, grassy, and faintly bitter, like an argument you lost last spring but still think about in the bath. You glance around the room. It's unadorned, just a scroll with a seasonal painting, plum blossoms, of course, and a small shelf where you keep writing brushes that never behave the same way twice. This is your time now. The mid-morning pace slows. The clamor of armor, meetings, and messengers is hushed. Even the kitchen is quieted, save for the occasional tap of knives against cutting boards. You pick up a brush. No ink yet, just the brush. You let it hover over the paper. Maybe you'll write a letter, maybe you'll draw a crab. You haven't decided. but your mind drifts, as it always does, to the idea of the plum. Why this fruit? Why has it become the standard bearer of your class's strange relationship with discipline and flavor? There are practical reasons, of course. Umeboshi are antimicrobial, ideal for preserving rice on journeys. They're packed with citric acid, which supposedly helps with fatigue. They last forever. But there's something deeper. You begin sketching a circle, nothing specific, just the shape. The brush moves on its own. Historians still argue whether the association between samurai and pickled plums was ceremonial or just deeply habitual, like a warrior version of morning coffee. Either way, it stuck. You recall a rumor that one famous general refused to go into battle without sucking on a plum pit beforehand, said it kept him alert. Another supposedly had a jar hidden in his armor just in case he needed to meditate and snack at the same time. You chuckle softly. The brush slips. Your circle turns into something more like a turtle. You decide to embrace it. Another knock. It's softer this time. A junior page, no older than 16, bows and speaks hesitantly. There's a visitor, a retired poet who once taught your father. He's brought a gift. You sigh again. You nod. The poet enters with the gait of someone who's made peace with gravity. He bows. You rise to meet him. There is the exchange of pleasantries, the weather, the health of mutual acquaintances, a shared dislike of late spring humidity. He presents the gift. You already know what it is. A jar of pickled plums, hand-packed, wrapped in brocade. He insists they were made using a secret recipe passed down by monks who claim to have spoken with cranes. You thank him. You mean it. Later, when he's gone, you unwrap the jar and hold it up to the light. The plums are small, nearly spherical, suspended in their brine like watchful eyes. You take one out and bite it slowly, cautiously, like it might hold a secret. It tastes like memory, like old roads in colder winters, like something your father might have handed you without explanation. You eat the whole thing, then you go lie down for a while, because even a samurai lord, armored in tradition and vinegar, deserves a nap. You wake slowly, as if surfacing from the bottom of a very old lake. The room is warm with the kind of light that slants in sideways, catching dust motes in the air like they're performing a solo ballet. Your limbs feel heavy, pleasantly so. A nap after pickled plum consumption is more tradition than indulgence. Even the most fearsome warlords, history tells us, succumbed to post-plum drowsiness. There's no shame in it. You rise, stretch, and listen. Somewhere a wooden flute is playing not for you, just for the air. The notes drift in, thin and hesitant, probably from the young servant who plays it to practice breathing control. You've heard better, but you've also heard generals try to sing after 3 cups of sake. This is soothing by comparison. You call softly, and your attendant appears like he was summoned by thought alone. He doesn't speak, just bows and sets out your walking shoes. It's time for the garden circuit. Samurai lords are known for their strategic minds, their swordsmanship, their unwavering sense of honor, but fewer people mention how many of them secretly loved landscaping. You walk through the back veranda and step into the mossy calm of your private stroll path. The stepping stones were set just irregularly enough to make you pay attention, but not enough to make you curse the gardener. The breeze smells faintly of rain, though the sky is clear. Your robes shift gently around your ankles. Every detail here has been shaped. The path curves to reveal a small pond with a single orange carp. The pine tree leans precisely where it needs to for that one dramatic branch shadow. You pause near a rock that's always reminded you of your uncle's forehead. You've never said this aloud, not even during New Year's sake toasts. Beneath the low maple tree, there's a bench's smooth slab of wood that's been worn to silk by years of meditative sitting. You lower yourself onto it and stare at a plum tree in bloom. Its petals are like whispers on the wind, some drifting down, one landing on your sleeve. This tree, this very one, has been in your family garden for 3 generations. It produces a modest number of fruit each year, enough to pickle, not enough to trade. Its plums are sourer than most, stronger, less décorative. You suspect that's why it's still here. Historians still argue whether samurai lords preferred the bitterest plums as a reflection of their Stoic philosophy, or whether it was just what grew best in rocky soil. You don't know. You do know that when you bite into one, it feels like a dare. You pluck a single fruit from the branch. It's not ripe and not yet, but you turn it in your fingers. It's smaller than a coin, still firm. You slip it into your sleeve. Just a token, something to remember this moment by. You rise again, brushing leaf crumbs from your robe, and follow the path deeper. The next section of the garden is wilderness to look untamed, though of course it's meticulously planned. There's a patch of edible herbs here, mugwort, perilla, even some wild chrysanthemum. Occasionally, you come here with your cook to point at plants and pretend you're a foraging expert. Today, the cook is already there. He straightens when he sees you and gives a respectful half bow. He's clutching a small woven basket filled with greens. For the evening pickles, he says. You nod. You ask what else he's preparing. He says something vague about root vegetables and miso, but you catch the glint in his eye. Ah, he's experimenting again. You like that, as long as no glowing squid appear. You continue past him, reaching the far end of the garden, where a bamboo fence marks the property's edge. Beyond it, forest, quiet, old, sometimes visited by foxes. You used to imagine it was enchanted. Maybe it still is. You sit again, this time on a rock, cold and unyielding. The stone bench's less polite cousin. Here, in the quiet, your mind drifts once more. You think about other samurai lords, distant provinces, rumors of shifting alliances, treaties folded into fans. You wonder what they had for lunch. Probably not plum, maybe sweet potatoes, maybe nothing at all. You wonder if they ever walk their gardens in silence like this, considering the trajectory of a falling blossom. You picture one Lord Yamamura, perhaps, with his loud laugh and tragic poetry. You once sent him a jar of your own pickled plums. He sent back a letter describing them as surprisingly emotional. You've never been sure if that was praise. Back through the garden now, back to the bench, the pond, the stepping stones. You hear the flute, again less hesitant now, or maybe you're just more patient. Inside, your servant awaits with a clean cloth and a warm towel. He says dinner will be early tonight, as the astrologer has suggested, auspicious stomach alignment. You don't argue. You've eaten stranger things on weaker advice. As you return to your quarters, the sun has begun to lower, casting long shadows across the tatami floor. Your sandals click faintly, then are removed at the doorway. You step inside. On your writing desk, a note. It's written in the scribe's flowing hand, but clearly dictated by your cousin. He'll be visiting next week. He's sending a gift ahead of him. You already know what it will be. Plums, as always the plums. You smile and set the note down. There's a sense of comfort in the repetition, in the rituals of robe and armor, of garden walks and sour fruit. The day moves gently toward its end, and you move with it slowly, thoughtfully, like someone who has already eaten enough salt to preserve a kingdom. The sky now wears a color that isn't quite blue anymore, but not yet evening, either somewhere between quiet conversation and an old memory. You wash your hands at the stone basin outside your room, the water cool and metallic, and you dry them on a linen cloth woven so finely it could whisper your secrets back to you. The cook has outdone himself. You're seated on the veranda again, this time facing the western edge of the compound, where the sun dips behind low hills. A tray is placed before you with quiet reverence. No fanfare, no drumming. Just you and the food, a relationship older than your family crest. Tonight's dinner leans rustic. There's steamed millet instead of ricea, nod to ancient tastes. A bowl of miso soup, thick with shreds of kombu and a lonely slice of lotus root. Beside that, slices of grilled yam glazed in soy and sugar, artfully charred on the edges, as if someone kissed them with fire and then walked away. And then, predictably, there it is. One single pickled plum, dark, wrinkled, smaller than usual, the kind of plum that has seen things. You take it in slowly, chewing with practiced attention. It's salty, yes, but also faintly sweet. There's a flavor here that you can't place. Not quite medicinal, not quite herbal, almost floral. You glance at your servant, who bows with a suspicious lack of eye contact. Ah, an experiment. One of the cook's odd twists. You raise a brow. He hesitates, then confess it was cured with chrysanthemum petals and a dash of mountain honey. You pose. Consider. Then finally nod. He exhales in visible relief, as if he just avoided a diplomatic crisis. Historians still argue whether these minor culinary innovations among samurai households were expressions of cultural individuality or simply the result of one too many harvests of the same ingredient. But in your house, plum variety is a subtle otter language between cook and lord, salted and fermented. You sip the miso, warm, deep, and comforting, the kind of soup that feels like an older brother, protective, vaguely judging, probably tells you when your armor's uneven. Across the courtyard, a lantern is lit. Then another. Small pools of gold appear around the estate, each flicker announcing the coming of night. Someone has begun burning incense, something soft, like sandalwood or maybe clove. You tilt your head back. Somewhere above the roofline, stars are arriving late but determined. After the meal, there is a ritual that you rarely skip. Calligraphy practice, not for court, not for letters, just for yourself. You prefer to copy old poetry, sometimes lines from obscure monks, sometimes ancient Chinese verses that still resonate like drum beats underwater. Tonight, you choose a short verse from a Heian noblewoman, something about longing and steamed chestnuts. You dip the brush, ink pools, the brush moves. The first stroke is too bold, but you don't correct it. This is part of the process, letting imperfection sit beside intention, like rivals who know they'll always end up drinking together anyway. Outside, the wind shifts. A curtain rustles. You glance at the plum jar on the corner shelf, half full now. You've been rationing them without meaning to. Or maybe you realize you just want to see how long they'll last. The fire in the brazier crackles, low and steady. There's something almost amusing about it all, how the pickled plum, so unassuming and wrinkled, has carved itself a throne at the center of your day. Not the sword, not the scroll, not even the tea just, that humble orb of preserved sourness. You once heard a story, possibly apocryphal, about a daimyo who demanded his ashes be stored in a plum jar. No urn, just the plum jar. Said it felt like home. You wonder if it's true. Maybe someday you'll write a story like that. Or maybe someone already is, watching you from the other side of time. You wake before the sun, not because you must, but because your body has grown used to these quiet hours, those moments before the birds begin to gossip and the world decides to stretch its legs. Your room is dim, with only the faintest suggestion of dawn. The paper screens glow in a shy, silvery way, as if they're unsure whether they're allowed to be luminous yet. You sit up slowly, brush your hands over your thighs, and listen. The estate is still. Not silent, no, but still. You hear the bamboo fountain in the outer courtyard, the soft clack of its rhythmic tipping, like the heartbeat of the garden. Someone coughs far away, perhaps the stable boy. And then, just under that, the first sizzle of rice cooking. You rise. Not dramatically. This isn't a stage. You wash your face with water that bites just enough to finish waking you, and then dress in simpler robe-line and tied loose, in that pale ochre color you always forget the name of, morning robes. Outside, the sky is slipping from ink to pearl. You step into the outer walkway, and already a tray is waiting set there without sound, like an offering left by forest spirits. This is breakfast again, but a different one, simpler, less ceremony, more comfort. The cook knows your moods by now. There's a bowl of white rice, steamed to quiet perfection, a few thin slices of daikon pickled in sweet vinegar, a sliver of grilled fish, salted and a little smoky, and of course, the pickled plum. This one's a classic. Old school, ruby red, dense, salted until your mouth prepares itself out of habit. You pick it up between chopsticks and hold it there a moment. The morning is still stretching its legs, and here you are, already confronting sourness. You eat it slowly. It's like chewing on thunder that got tired halfway through and decided to be a cloud instead. Sharp, yes, but also grounding. You feel yourself settle. Historians still argue whether breakfast plums were more about taste or preservation, whether they were preferred for their digestive benefits or simply because they lasted through the long, humid seasons. But sitting here, you're convinced it's neither. It's rhythm. You always return to the plum. Even when breakfast changes, even when travel disrupts your meal, even when wars or weddings or winter storms shift your routines, there is still somehow a plum. You finish your rice. The fish disappears without drama. You drink warm barley tea that tastes faintly like hay, but in the best, most loyal way. Your servant joins you for a moment not to eat, but to read the day's schedule aloud. You pretend to listen, nodding occasionally while watching a pair of crows argue in a nearby tree. Something about a visiting monk, an armorer who's running late, and an envoy who smells like pine sap. You respond with a vague grunt that could mean either interesting or may the gods handle it. You rise. There's a small mirror near the doorway, and you pause before it not to admire, but to inspect. One stray hair. You smooth it back with practiced fingers. Now, it's time for sword drills. Yes, even before the second cup of tea. You step into the training courtyard, the stones still damp with dew. The air is thick with morning, but not heavy, just thoughtful. You take your place at the center, and someone hands you a practice sword. You nod, grip, and begin. The movements come slowly at first shoulder, hip, wrist, then faster until it's like dancing with an invisible partner who's always half a step ahead. The sword whistles through the air in wide arcs, and you breathe with each motion. No audience, no opponent, just you. And somewhere in the back of your mind, the ghost of a plum. You remember your grandfather swinging a sword with a half-chewed pickled plum still in his cheek, muttering about balance. If you can strike with salt on your tongue, he said, you can strike with anything. You used to think he meant focus. Now you suspect he meant spite. Either way, you finish the drill sweaty and amused. Your servant hands you a towel and a fresh cup of water infused with plum blossom. You raise a brow. He says it's supposed to cool the blood. You sip. It tastes faintly like spring. If spring had a hint of vinegar and an old soul, you return to the veranda, this time with a scroll, not one of war or law, but of pickling notes recipes passed down through the household. Your grandmother wrote most of them, and her commentary remains scrawled in the margins. Too sour. Use only for enemies. This batch whispered secrets to me. Do not repeat. Perfect. Do not touch. You chuckle quietly. You can almost hear her voice behind the words, that dry wit she always wore like perfume. You flip the scroll to one particular entry. Double-aged plum, smoked over rice straw, sealed with seaweed. A delicacy, a rumor. You've only ever tasted it once. It burned but beautifully. One day you'll try making it yourself. Not today, but soon. The morning slips into full light and your duties begin calling. You rise with a slow groan and the distinct sound of old joints offering their opinion. Before you leave the veranda, you look back at the tray. Only a few rice grains remain, but the plums echo salt, sour, memory lingers on your tongue. The afternoon unfolds with the slow, deliberate pace of a brushstroke across silk. You find yourself in the study, a quiet room lined with scrolls and wooden shelves holding the collected wisdom of generations. Here the world feels a little softer, as if the weight of armor and duty has melted into ink and paper. A servant brings you a small bowl of umeboshi, nestled beside a plate of freshly baked rice cakes. You pick up a plum, the skin wrinkled yet vibrant, and place it carefully on your tongue. The familiar sharpness awakens your senses, but also soothes a paradox only the plum can master. You unfurl a scroll detailing the origins of the yume tree in Japan, tracing its path from ancient China through trade and migration. The text includes elegant illustrations of the blossoms, the fruit, and early pickling techniques. You imagine the long journey these recipes traveled passed hand to hand from scholar to farmer, samurai to merchant. Historians still debate the exact timeline of how umeboshi became a staple in samurai diets, but all agree on its enduring presence. Nearby, a small lacquer box holds letters between past lords and their cooks' conversations about flavor, preservation, and the subtle art of balancing sour and salty. One note even mentions experimenting with adding ginger and shiso leaves, an unusual twist for its time. You chuckle softly. It's a reminder that even centuries ago, people were as curious and inventive with their food as we are now, though, without the luxury of microwaves or instant noodles. You lean back, letting the afternoon light warm your face, and sip a cup of plum blossom tea. The floral aroma mingles with the lingering taste of pickled plum, creating a sensory tapestry that feels both grounding and ephemeral. Outside the window, the garden's maple leaves begin their slow change, a reminder that seasons shift and life moves forward, no matter how tightly you cling to tradition. You think about the balance the samurai sought not just on the battlefield, but in daily life. Discipline and indulgence, strength and softness. The plum embodies this balance, humble yet potent, sour yet sweet. You tuck the scroll away and prepare to meet your retainers for the evening briefing. But before you leave, you take one last look at the lacquer box, the faded letters inside whispering stories of taste and time. In this quiet study, surrounded by history and memory, the pickled plum feels less like food and more like a companion, a steadfast reminder that even in the strictest of lives, there is room for simple joys. Historians still argue whether the earliest pickling methods came from necessity or a genuine appreciation for fermented flavors. You suspect it was a little of both, survival wrapped in something almost poetic. As the sun moves lower, the shadows lengthen, stretching across the gravel paths like lazy cats. You rise and stroll toward a small pavilion where a tea ceremony is about to begin. The guests are few but impotent, a mix of samurai retainers and local scholars, all seated quietly on woven mats. You settle into your place, folding your hands in your lap. The tea master moves with slow grace, preparing matcha with the precision of a surgeon and the calm of a monk. The powdered green tea is whisked into a frothy green cloud, and you receive the bowl with both hands, lifting it gently to your lips. The bitterness of the matcha contrasts with the lingering sweetness of plum in your mouth, a harmony of flavors that feels like a secret shared between old friends. The conversation drifts to the umeboshi plums, their role in daily life as much more than a condiment. Stories emerge about their supposed medicinal qualities. Some swear by their ability to ease fatigue, others by their power to prevent illness. You recall a tale of samurai warriors who carried plums into battle, believing they were as essential as their swords. You smile to yourself. There is a quiet humor in this, how such a small fruit could carry so much importance, like a talisman or a whispered prayer. The tea master offers a final bow, and the guests rise with a collective murmur. You linger a moment longer, savoring the peaceful atmosphere before the evening duties call you back. As you walk through the garden once more, you catch sight of a solitary plum tree, its branches heavy with ripe fruit glowing softly in the twilight. You reach out and touch a single fruit, feeling the cool skin beneath your fingers. In this moment, you understand that the plum is more than food or tradition. It is a symbol of endurance, transformation, and quiet strength. And as night begins to fall, you carry that thought with you like a gentle ember glowing in the dark. The night deepens, folding the estate into a cloak of shadow and silence. Your footsteps are soft against the wooden floors as you move through the dimly lit corridors, lanterns flickering like fireflies caught in glass. The air is cooler now, carrying the faint scent of incense mingled with the lingering saltiness of pickled plums from earlier meals. You pause at the kitchen doorway, where the faint murmur of voices reminds you that the day's work isn't quite done. The cooks and servants bustle quietly, preparing for tomorrow's breakfast, and maintaining the ritual of care that surrounds food in this household. You step inside briefly, watching a young apprentice carefully slice a batch of yume for tomorrow's pickling. The plum slices glisten under the low lantern light, their pale flesh waiting patiently to be transformed. The apprentice's hands are steady but unpracticed, each cut a lesson in patience and precision. Historians still debate how much of the pickling process was standardized in samurai kitchens versus adapted on the fly, shaped by the seasons, available ingredients, and the whims of the head cook. You think about how this balance between discipline and improvisation mirrors much of the samurai life itself. Leaving the kitchen, you head toward the inner garden, where the moon hangs low, a pale guardian watching over the sleeping estate. The stone path is cool beneath your feet, and the sound of a nearby stream adds a gentle rhythm to the stillness. You find your way to a small pavilion where a tea set waits, untouched since the afternoon ceremony. The quiet beckons you to sit, to savor the night's peace. You pour a cup of hot water over dried plum blossoms, letting the tea steep until the color deepens to a soft amber. As you sip, your thoughts drift to the medicinal qualities attributed to eboshith, where they were believed to aid digestion, fight fatigue, and even ward off evil spirits. You recall stories passed down through generations of warriors carrying these plums on long campaigns, finding comfort in their familiar taste amid the chaos of battle. The taste of the plum blossom tea is delicate, floral, and comforting, like a lullaby whispered by the past. You feel the day's tension melt away with each slow breath. Suddenly, a distant owl hoots, breaking the silence. You smile softly, remembering how the nights here are full of small sounds that tell stories if you listen closely. Crickets wind through bamboo, the occasional rustle of a night creature. You close your eyes briefly, letting the calm wash over you. The plum's legacy is not just in the kitchen or on the battlefield, but in these quiet moments, the rituals, the tastes, the memories that thread through time. When you finally rise, the moon has moved higher, casting a silver glow over the garden. You walk back toward your room, feeling the steady beat of history beneath your feet and the comforting presence of the humble pickled plum in your heart. Morning breaks again, but this time with a slightly different rhythm. You're no longer the young samurai just waking to the ritual of breakfast. You're the lord now, responsible not only for your own meal, but for the well-being of your retainers. The estate hums with quiet activity, servants preparing the morning's fare with practiced care, their movements synchronized like the parts of a well-oiled machine. You make your way to the dining hala room, bathed in soft light filtering through rice paper screens. The long wooden table is set simply, with lacquered bowls and neatly folded cloth napkins. A tray carries the staples: steamed rice, grilled fish, miso soup, and of course, a small dish of pickled plums, their ruby red hue bright against the pale porcelain. You take your seat and survey the scene. The atmosphere is calm but purposeful. Your retainers arrive, bow respectfully, and begin their own quiet breakfast. It's a moment of shared ritual, a pause before the duties of the day claim everyone's attention. As you eat, you notice the subtle variations in plum quality, the texture, the saltiness, the faint whispers of sweetness beneath the sourness. These nuances matter. They speak of the season, the care taken in preparation, the skill of the pickler. You recall that in some regions, samurai believed umeboshi could sharpen the mind and steady the hand, qualities essential for a warrior facing uncertain battles. Others insisted the plum's sourness was a reminder to endure hardship with grace. Historians still debate whether these beliefs were rooted more in superstition or early understandings of nutrition. Either way, you find yourself appreciating the symbolism as much as the flavor. After breakfast, you walk through the estate's storerooms, where rows of earthenware jars rest in cool darkness, each filled with plums at various stages of pickling. The scent of fermentation is faint, but distinct, earthy, and alive. You touch one jar's lid thoughtfully. There's a mystery in these jars, a slow alchemy that transforms fruit into something far greater. It's a process that demands patience and trust in time, much like the art of leadership itself. Later, you visit the kitchen again, this time to inspect the pickling preparations. The head cook shows you a batch of freshly salted yum, their skins taut and shiny, resting under weighted stones to press out excess moisture. You handle a plum gently, feeling its cool firmness. The cook mentions a new technique learned from traders along the Silk Road using a particular type of seaweed to seal the jars and enhance flavor. It's a reminder that even traditions as old as these are not immune to change. You smile quietly at the thought. In this world, even the smallest plum can tell stories of distant lands and unexpected connections. As you leave the kitchen, the sun climbs higher, casting a warm glow over the estate. The day's business awaits, but for now, you carry the quiet strength of the plum with you, a reminder that even in the rush of duty, there is space for simple pleasures. The afternoon unfolds with the slow, deliberate pace of a brushstroke across silk. You find yourself in the study, a quiet room lined with scrolls and wooden shelves holding the collected wisdom of generations. Here, the world feels a little softer, as if the weight of armor and duty has melted into ink and paper. A servant brings you a small bowl of umeboshi, nestled beside a plate of freshly baked rice cakes. You pick up a plum, the skin wrinkled yet vibrant, and place it carefully on your tongue. The familiar sharpness awakens your senses, but also soothes a paradox only the plum can master. You unfurl a scroll detailing the origins of the yume tree in Japan, tracing its path from ancient China through trade and migration. The text includes elegant illustrations of the blossoms, the fruit, and early pickling techniques. You imagine the long journey these recipes traveled, passed hand to hand, from scholar to farmer, samurai to merchant. Historians still debate the exact timeline of how umeboshi became a staple in samurai diets, but all agree on its enduring presence. Nearby, a small lacquer box holds letters between past lords and their cooks' conversations about flavor, preservation, and the subtle art of balancing sour and salty. One note even mentions experimenting with adding ginger and shiso leaves, an unusual twist for its time. You chuckle softly. It's a reminder that even centuries ago, people were as curious and inventive with their food as we are now, though without the luxury of microwaves or instant noodles. You lean back, letting the afternoon light warm your face, and sip a cup of plum blossom tea. The floral aroma mingles with the lingering taste of pickled plum, creating a sensory tapestry that feels both grounding and ephemeral. Outside the window, the garden's maple leaves begin their slow change, a reminder that seasons shift and life moves forward, no matter how tightly you cling to tradition. You think about the balance the samurai sought not just on the battlefield, but in daily life. Discipline and indulgence, strength and softness. The plum embodies this balance, humble yet potent, sour yet sweet. You tuck the scroll away and prepare to meet your retainers for the evening briefing. But before you leave, you take one last look at the lacquer box, the faded letters inside whispering stories of taste and time. In this quiet study, surrounded by history and memory, the pickled plum feels less like food and more like a companion, a steadfast reminder that even in the strictest of lives, there is room for simple joys. As twilight seeps into the estate, you find yourself drawn once again to the kitchen courtyard, where a small fire crackles softly. The evening air carries the comforting sense of wood smoke mingling with lingering plum brinny, a reminder of the day's rituals and the work yet to come. A group of cooks and servants gather around the fire, their faces illuminated by flickering light. They share quiet laughter and stories, the tension of the day melting into warmth and camaraderie. You join them briefly, feeling the gentle pulse of human connection beneath the estate's formal facade. You notice one elder cook carefully peeling a batch of yum, her hands steady despite years of labor. She hums a soft Tunian old folk song about the yum trees blossoming in spring, a song said to bring good fortune and health. Historians still debate whether these songs were purely celebratory or served a deeper ritual purpose in pickling practices. You lean toward the idea that they carried a little magic of hope woven into every turn of the fruit. The cook offers you a small slice of pickled plum, and you accept, letting the tangy flavor linger on your tongue. There's a peculiar comfort in this simple act, as if the fruit carries a gentle blessing from the past. You watch the flames dance, thinking about how the Umeboshi's preservation was not just about survival, but about savoring life's small pleasures amid uncertainty. Even samurai, with their strict codes and fierce battles, found solace in these quiet moments. The conversation drifts toward the strange laws governing food and drink in the Edo period rules, about what could be served to whom, when, and how. Some were practical, others more symbolic, reflecting status and tradition. You smile at the thought of pickled plums as a silent rebellion, a tart reminder that even in the strictest hierarchies, there was room for individuality and taste. As the fire dies down, you take a deep breath, feeling the day's stories settle gently inside you. Tomorrow will bring new routines, new challenges, but tonight the plum's quiet strength is enough. You rise and step away, the soft glow of embers fading behind you as the estate slips into restful darkness. The early morning mist curls around the estate like a soft veil as you step outside once more. The world feels hushed, still wrapped in the quiet before dawn. Dew clings to leaves and stones, sparkling faintly as the first pale light stretches across the sky. You head toward the kitchen garden, where rows of yume trees stand like patient sentinels, their branches heavy with plump fruit. The air is crisp, carrying the faintest whisper of the blossoms that will come in spring. You reach out to touch a cluster of unripe plums, feeling their cool, firm skins beneath your fingertips. It's a moment suspended in time, a quiet promise of transformation waiting just beneath the surface. The gardeners are already at work, their movements deliberate and reverent as they prune branches and clear fallen leaves. One pauses to greet you with a soft bow, offering a basket of freshly harvested seaweed, a key ingredient in the pickling process. You think about the delicate balance involved in preserving humusalt, air, thyme, and now seaweed, each element playing its part in creating the perfect plum. The kitchen's art is a quiet alchemy, invisible to most, but vital to those who know its value. Historians still argue whether the use of seaweed in pickling came from coastal farmers or samurai estates, but all agree it added a subtle umami note that elevated the humble plum. As you walk through the garden paths, you notice small insects buzzing lazily around the plants, bees, butterflies, and dragonflies, each playing their role in the delicate ecosystem. Their presence feels like a reminder that life, like the yume, is part of a larger cycle. You pause at a small stone lantern, its surface worn smooth by time. It casts a faint shadow over a mossy patch where a single fallen plum rests. You pick it up gently, noting its soft, slightly fermented scent. In this quiet moment, the plum seems less like food and more like a story of seasons, patience, and the gentle persistence of nature. You tuck the fruit into your pocket and head back inside, the estate slowly waking around you. The rituals will begin anew, but for now the cool dawn holds a promise of calm and renewal. The day closes softly as you return to your chamber, the last rays of sunlight filtering through shoji screens, casting delicate patterns of shadow and light on the tatami mats. The familiar scent of aged wood and faint traces of incense mingle in the air, wrapping around you like a comforting shawl. You sit quietly, reflecting on the cycle you've lived through, the rhythms of preparation, ritual, and repose that define the samurai breakfast routine and the enduring presence of the pickled plum. There's a gentle satisfaction in this repetition, a reassurance that no matter the chaos beyond these walls, here is a place where time slows, flavors deepen, and traditions hold steady. You reach for the small dish of umeboshi resting beside your tea, savoring its tartness as the day's cares begin to melt away. The plum's sharpness is a final punctuation mark on the day's story, a reminder of resilience wrapped in simplicity. Historians still debate the exact origins of the samurai's devotion to umeboshi, but perhaps the truth is less about history and more about the human need for comfort, ritual, and a taste that lingers. You close your eyes briefly, the memories of the day blending with the quiet night. The garden outside whispers in the breeze, and somewhere a distant bell tolls a soft sound, marking the passage of time. In this moment, you feel the steady heartbeat of the past beneath your own. The plum, the routine, the stories, they are all threads in a fabric woven through centuries. As sleep beckons, you carry these gentle rhythms with you, letting the sour sweetness of the pickled plum soothe your mind and ease you into rest. Now, as the quiet deepens, feel the steady pulse of history beneath your breath, the soft rustle of leaves outside your window, the faint scent of blossom drifting on a cool breeze. These are the gentle echoes of a world long past yet never far away. Imagine the slow dance of seasons, the patient work of hands, preserving plums in jars sealed tight against time. Taste again the tartness, the subtle salt, the whisper of sweet notes beneath the flavors, a lullaby sung across centuries. You've walked the quiet halls, smelled the smoke of evening fires, felt the cool dawn dew on your skin. These moments hold a softness that invites your mind to drift, to float between past and present, waking and dreaming. Let your breath slow, feel your muscles relax. The weight of day fades, replaced by a calm that spreads like the gentle folding of paper screens. Tomorrow will come with its own rhythms and rituals, but tonight, rest is the truest form of honor. The plum's strength is quiet, steady, waiting patiently for your return. So, as you settle deeper into comfort, know that these stories remain here, wrapped in the softness of memory and the sweet tang of pickled plums. Sleep well.